Is Spencer Pratt right about LA? Is he right about LA's homeless problem, about LA's drug problem, about LA's leadership problem? In this video, I'm going to respond to what everyone wants to know. What do we do about LA? Here's an insider's guide. Okay, here we go. Let's start. So there is a huge problem in LA that everybody knows that. The question is what Spencer Pratt is saying right? Because you're not really seeing the other side say too much. They're saying, hey, yeah, we've actually made a dent in the homeless problem here. Well, take it from me, just really quick. Lived in LA. I've lived in LA 30 years. I still live in LA. I'm an expert on psychiatry and psychology. I'm also an expert on addiction, and I understand the public policy angle here because I've been a victim of it in LA. I experienced something that we call Poopgate. I used to live in Venice Beach. Every single time I would dress up for work, I'd wear a suit. I'd either go to UCLA where I was working or a treatment center that I owned, and I would have a suit on. I would open up the garage would come open, and there would be a mound of poop outside my garage. And I'm like, oh my God. And I thought it was dog poop. And so I would clean it and then, put it wherever I could, which was usually wrap it in a bunch of stuff and then put it in the trash, which is disgusting, as is disgusting cleaning it up. But eventually we got cameras and we put cameras to go in and look at it. Well, here's what was going on. A guy with his dog would come into the back alley late at night. I'm like, oh, the dog was pooping, right? No, the dog was on the lookout for the guy who crouches down and starts pooping right by my garage, like at least 3 or 4 times a week, while the dog was doing lookout. I mean, it was disgusting. But guess what? There's nothing you can do in LA. You call the cops, they don't do anything. They don't enforce anything. There is zero that can be done. That guy can poop all over my lawn. He can jump my fence. He can poop outside my garage. His dog and him can have pooping competitions. They could do all sorts of things in this Poopgate scenario, and there's nothing we can do. So lack of enforcement, lack of law enforcement, all of that is based on homeless rights. So here in LA County, homeless rights trump everything else. Now, the question is, from a psychological and psychiatric perspective, do you have your full battery of rights when you are altered? If you're altered under the influence of a mental health condition, very often a severe mental health condition, or if you're under the influence of drugs, where you could be a danger to self or danger to others, if not the most common with the homeless, which is gravely disabled, then do you have your full array of rights? Because I don't think it's rocket science here, but I can tell you as a professional that drugs impact your executive functioning. Drugs impact your ability to know right and wrong, to make decisions. Drugs like meth, dopaminergic drugs that really expand the amount of dopamine we have and cause all sorts of changes in our neurotransmission, will make us more impulsive and less able to rationalize and have good judgment and have good reasoning behind why we're doing what we're doing in the decisions that we make. Mental health conditions can do the same depending on which condition it is. So you are essentially altered. And the question is, do you have a full array of rights? Because I don't believe you do. And that's coming from a psychiatrist who wants to help people. And I have worked with the homeless. I have worked at Twin Towers with people who have been incarcerated. I've worked with all different types of people. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, you look at homeless, you look at drugs. Now, what's the policy that people are using here in LA? They're focusing on harm reduction. Okay, so some of you know what harm reduction is, some of you don't. I'll tell you. Harm reduction is essentially a public policy where we want people not to harm themselves. So we're going to give them clean needles. We're going to do a needle exchange. We're going to give them Narcan to prevent opioid overdoses. We're going to do everything we can to help them to continue to use drugs or to continue to manage the lifestyle they have on the street. That is also a problem, not just from the perspective of, hey, there's needles by our kids' schools, there's needles on our blocks. And trust me, I have seen needles outside of my place in Venice. We actually had to move from Venice because there was too many naked people, too many homeless people just walking around. There's homeless people jumping our fence, walking around at 2 a.m. I hear something outside and I open the window and there's some dude who's just like laying around, lounging around in my front yard. And he's definitely high. He's on something. And you don't know if he's on PCP or on like a serious pure meth dose, which what some people are calling super meth. Like you don't know what that guy's on. So all I can do is like yell at the guy to go away. Cops aren't going to do anything, unless they catch him right in the act and he's actually doing something to vandalize my place. So it's a serious, serious problem. We moved out of Venice Beach, and now check this out. We moved to a place where right down the street, Weingart took over a building. Super corrupt, and this is getting to my next point. So point number one, homeless rights. Point number two is outside of homeless and drugs, it's the concept of harm reduction, which doesn't work. And I'm going to tell you why. And point number three is corruption amongst our leaders. So Weingart nonprofit, decides to buy a property that was on the market for $11 million. That's not far from us and where we live right now. It got sold for $27 million. $27 million. $16 million profit. It was a flip. And what ends up happening is it gets bought using taxpayer money for $27 million. This is on Joe Rogan. It's been a bunch of articles. There's this lovely woman named Samantha who's been like the spearhead behind uncovering the corruption on this. Taxpayer money. Where does that profit go? Do the taxpayers own this? It used to be a senior home, and now they're looking at a drug home of some sort, like a sober living. But that $16 million goes to somebody's pockets. And one person's already been arrested. They're doing a big thing. That building should never have anything in it. It was a senior home. It should stay a senior home, if anything. But then they say, oh, this is just going to be a sober place for sober people. Now, apparently, it's a harm reduction site, and they're trying to slip that under the table. The corruption in LA is insane. It really is insane. So, corruption. Now, why is harm reduction such a problem? Outside of having needles, all over the place and drugs all over the place, here's the big one that people aren't talking about. Fentanyl. So fentanyl, synthetic opioid, 50 times stronger than heroin, all that stuff. Everybody knows the overdose potential is super high. So when you're looking at risk reward between what is the possibility of keeping this harm reduction policy versus, hey, let people keep doing drugs, but let them keep doing drugs that meth sometimes is combined with fentanyl. You think you're doing an opioid and you're actually doing some fentanyl or a lot of fentanyl. That's why accidental overdoses are happening all over the place. So in harm reduction, you're kind of allowing people to roll the dice to see if they're going to get some dose of fentanyl where there's a potential problem of overdose. And when I'm looking at risk reward, okay, I don't want someone to get Hep B or Hep C or get dirty needles or get endocarditis or get an infection here, but I also don't want them to die if they keep using drugs and have more violent episodes on the street, have problems with kids, have problems. We moved out of Venice because some person who was homeless was harassing my little son and his mom. Like it's not all homeless people are violent by any means, but at the same time, if they're not in their right mind for whatever reason, that's a huge problem. It is a societal problem, and it needs to be dealt with from that perspective, which is treatment or legal. Here's the other thing that's been happening. So in the policy, I'm going to look up what it's called. Karen Bass had the Inside Safe program and spent like $300 million on it. And it's the concept of going from unsheltered to sheltered. And spending over $300 million launching the program in 2022, they said they moved about 5,800 people, according to this article, into interim housing. The problem is housing first before treatment. everybody's so focused on housing, 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 housing. Well, guess what? If somebody is sick, if they have a mental health condition, if they have an addiction, yeah, you can give them a great housing situation, but guess what they're going to do? They're going to use again, or they're going to be suffering in their mental health condition and end up coming out of that interim housing. And guess what? According to these articles, about 40 to 50% of participants that they spent $300 million on to get them into housing came out of housing and went back into the streets. Why? Because they're untreated. People need to realize treatment first, then deal with housing. Treatment first, then deal with housing. So if you want to look at, like, a couple other things I get asked all the time, I'm just going to put this out in the video as well, is people are asking, what's super meth? Because back to Spencer Pratt, he's talking about super meth. Well, super meth is like synthetic based or purified meth. So if you can purify meth, I think I read some articles, 93%, it's P2P meth, phenyl 2-propanone. It's just making meth that's much more pure, which means much more chance of psychosis, much more chance of paranoia, much more chance of altered thinking, much more chance of impulsivity, much more chance of lacking the ability to make good decisions. You're much more likely to do something that you shouldn't be doing, something that could harm yourself, something that could harm others, something that could harm, put you in this state of grave disability. And that's the reality. I think most people have heard of 5150s, 72-hour hold, 5250s, longer extended hold, TCONs and conservatorships, long-term conservatorship by the state or by a person or by a family. Well, we do that if somebody is in danger of themselves or others. But here in LA, a friend of mine, a woman in her 20s, was coming out of a dance rehearsal and went to go sit on a bench outside of the train, because we have trains in LA, not like New York, not like subways, but we have trains. She's sitting there and a homeless guy with a machete sits down next to her. And she said, I have never been more scared in my life. I was absolutely terrified. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I should walk away. The guy's just like holding his machete like this. And he looks at me and he just holds it like this. And I don't know what to do. This guy, is he gonna stab me? What's he gonna do? So he started talking to me and she made small talk back in the most innocent way possible. And then it was time for her train and she slowly just kind of like scooted off of her chair, scooted until she left. And her heart was pumping, her heart was racing. She was like, didn't know what to do. She was terrified. And I would have been terrified. Some guy with a machete who's homeless, who's obviously got some mental health issue. Nobody said a word. Cops would probably be like, hey, dude, put your machete away. That's probably the extent of it. Here's the other thing that's crazy about all this is the way that they do research. Okay, so the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority says 25% of people on the street in LA have schizophrenic or a major psychotic disorder, 25%. And with anxiety and depression, that number goes up to 66% for mental health, for a mental health problem. They said it's roughly about 30% of people on the streets have long-term substance use problems. Okay, so then a Stanford Institute study said, hey, I don't know about those numbers. It might be between 66% and 82% of the homeless have a mental health or substance lifetime issue. And then a UCLA study through the California Policy Lab looks at it and says, no, it's actually 79% of the homeless population have a mental health problem, 75% have a substance abuse problem, and 84% have some type of health condition. So I looked into some of the research. I'm like, how can this research be so different? Some of them are 20, 30%, some of them are 70, 80%. Well, a lot of the research is done by self-reporting or by observation. So let's go through what that means, okay? Self-reporting is, hey, homeless guy, yeah. Can you let me know, are you having a severe mental health problem right now? No, you're okay? Just leave you alone? Okay, got it. That's a no. Hey, person over there, unhoused lady over there. Yeah. Are you psychotic? Do you have any drugs on you? Are you suffering from a drug problem? No? Okay, got it. That's it. No. Self-report. It's crazy. Then the other one is observation. Okay, let's observe everyone on the street right now. Okay, that person is talking to themselves. They look like they're psychotic. I'm going to give them a yes. Those 5 people, they're just kind of eating. They're not really doing anything. Doesn't look like they're screaming at anyone. Doesn't look like they have voices. They must be fine. Let's check them off as fine. Yeah, they're good. Without interviewing them, without checking on them, without observing them for a long period of time. It's a snapshot observation. That is absolutely crazy. So the research is just crazy. Now, in my opinion, and again, I have worked with the homeless, I've worked with the incarcerated, I've worked with a lot of these groups. These are the way I would categorize the homeless. 1, mental health. Mental health disorders. They are suffering from a mental health disorder. They are unable to participate in functional day-to-day living or in a living situation that they may have previously been in or maybe have never been in. And here's the big one. Because during the Reagan administration, long-term psychiatric care was cut and social services were cut, all those people that met criteria for mental health problems that were long-term, that were chronic, severe, or at least moderate, they were housed inside facilities where they could get ongoing mental health treatment. Some of them got better, some of them didn't, but they had a place to live, so they weren't on the streets. Those days are gone. But why can't we bring those days back? If instead of 300 million being funneled to have people go back on the streets and give them housing that they don't use, instead of lining the pockets of nonprofit CEOs that eventually get arrested if somebody finds out what's really going on with them, and giving all that money to people who don't deserve it, why not focus and channel that money towards long-term psychiatric treatment? Have a place, at least in LA County, if not California, if not the nation, for people to go and bring back long-term psychiatric care. That's 1. 2, injectables work really well. We are at a point now where it's Abilify Maintena or Trinza or Invega Sustenna and Trinza, Abilify Maintena, Risperdal Consta. I think olanzapine has a long-term. These are long-acting medications. You could give once a month, once every 3 months for one of them, or twice a month, and they don't have to keep coming back. Once a month. If you just did mandatory treatment of injectables, honestly, more treatment better, right? But if you can't get people in, at least injectables once a month, some type of vocational rehab and job skills training with treatment in a long-term psychiatric care facility will solve a lot of these problems. Injectables alone will solve a lot of these problems for those people that are paranoid and psychotic on the street. The goal is to get them less psychotic, no psychotic, stabilize the mood, stabilize their anxiety, so that, and this is so important, and this is what people are missing the boat on, so that they can make better decisions in their life. Their decision-making isn't being run by drugs or a mental health condition or impulsivity or a lack of executive functioning. The decisions are made when they are of the right mind to figure out what they're going to do with housing. This is about having great homeless rights when they're in the condition to make those decisions. Please, leadership, please, government leadership, whoever wins the mayoral race, please listen to this. Treatment first, housing second. You want to do interim housing while they're getting treatment? Please set up long-term psychiatric care facilities for them to have that interim housing. Use injectables. Homeless rights are great, but not if they're altered. And we need to overcome the corruption going around, especially in nonprofits. Just because it's called a nonprofit does not mean it's not corrupt. So many of these are corrupt. And I personally believe that, look, you give everyone the best possible scenario. You give them treatment. You give them psychiatric care. You treat them with respect. But if they still commit crimes, whether it's injecting on the street, or it's leaving dirty needles, or it's being naked and doing whatever they're doing on the streets, it's just doing things in front of schools, harassing and being psychotic toward people, and not being willing to go into treatment. Law enforcement needs to kick in at some point. It does. And it's treatment. The answer is treatment. And then if that doesn't work, then law enforcement. But you cannot say, hey, cops, hey, police, hey, law enforcement, there's nothing you can do. Leave the encampments where they are. Leave the needles where they are. Leave the psychotic people out in front of our schools. That doesn't work. That needs to change. Leadership needs to change that. So investigate nonprofits, zoning laws, vocational rehab, use injectables, subsidize drug treatment, subsidize mental health, treatment, or jail, and long-term psychiatric facilities. If you want to know what to do to solve the LA problem, there it is. There it is. I know this is a complex problem. I know it's much more complex than any of us could realize. But if you allocate the money that LA County has and stop siphoning it into people getting rich off of the homeless big business and the nonprofit big business, and actually give it to the people who need it, and create entities that can help the people who need it on the streets, this could be a problem that at least could be managed, if not solved. There it is. I'm going to do a whole series on what is wrong with LA, because I'm so pissed off that I'm flabbergasted. I don't even have words for how I feel, because I like this city. The city's got great weather. The city has things, amenities, things that used to be really, really cool. This used to be a great place to live. I did all my training at UCLA here. I've dabbled in the entertainment world here. I've been able to help a lot of people in the mental health world, the addiction world, the personal transformation world. I like this city. I want to help this city. I want to save this city. And our current leadership has absolutely failed. 100% failed. So my answer is Spencer Pratt right about what's going on in LA? He is. Is he the right guy to figure this out? I don't know. I know Karen Bass hasn't done a good job. I can tell you that. And I know that there's a lot of deep political problems in this city. I hope someone can fix it. That's what I have to say in this video. Thank you for listening.